and others. Now, let me say this, because when we talk about if you could afford it, there were people in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's a number of authentic hadiths, one of them where he gave to his wife memorization of the Quran because he did not have money. One of them gave an iron ring. This is another authentic hadith. One of them gave a goat's head. Now obviously that was cooked, but goat's head. I don't want you to get any wrong ideas here. Go out and cut the goat's head and say, yeah, I'd like to marry you. I don't think that would do very well. So, listen to what Allah said, because Allah promised to help those people that marry for His sake. There are three individuals that it is a right upon Allah to help them. A fighter in Allah's cause, a mukatib, a slave who makes a contract with his master to purchase his freedom, who wants to pay himself off, and one who seeks marriage for the purpose of preserving chastity. So this is a promise that you actually have a right on Allah for help if you go in this direction. Being single for a prolonged time is dangerous. It is, I think, mentally dangerous, spiritually dangerous, perhaps even physically dangerous. Can anybody add anything to that? Yes, Dr. Nath.
I think the biggest issue here is for young people, in my opinion, and I think that's what we are being taught here, is that when you can afford to marry, you have to take care of your spouse, you have to take care of yourself, and you have to have an education level that gets you to a point where you can have a good job that allows you to marry. Obviously money doesn't mean anything. You can borrow from somebody and give it to somebody. You can't keep your spouse safe if you can't afford to marry.
And in principle, I agree with you. Let me say this though. I deem by Allah, and this is what I would like to have been able to have done myself. If I had a daughter that wanted to get married to a Muslim, and let's say she was in college, and I used to tell my girls this before they ever reached puberty, that if you want to get married, you can live with us and go to college. You have to marry a Muslim. Now, none of them took me up on that. And I can understand that young people today might feel, well, that would cramp my style. My question to you is the priority to preserve your chastity, and to please Allah? We all have to make sacrifices. But I do believe that if parents would work together to see youth get married and support them, that we would have healthier Muslim society. Because right now what I'm seeing, for example, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you know of a Muslima who has gotten pregnant out of wedlock. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people raised their hand. I'm the 8th person, because I know of more than I'd like to even mention. Now, what would have been better in the eyes of Allah? For us to have let them get married and live with us, or the fact that they have messed their life up? And Sister Sadia, yes.
I had a couple of things to say. First thing I wanted to say is, as far as having money is concerned, in my opinion, there are multi-millionaires that are bankrupt, and there are poor people who know how to live within their means, quote unquote, who are below the poverty line, who are very well off, because they know how to live. So it's a financial responsibility thing. It's not like you have to meet a certain cutoff. Obviously, a poor person in Islam is a person who cannot have the next meal. That's the definition of poor. So I don't think there's too many poor people in this society, at least. That's the first thing. So financial responsibility, I think, is more important than the finances itself. itself. The second thing that I wanted to say is that I am very concerned that the way that society in general is moving, people don't feel the need to have a long-term spouse. They're becoming very self-centered, and they're also becoming very self-sufficient. And so the result is that the very little bit that they need, which may be the sexual gratification, is very comfortably attained outside the the normal marriage thing. And so people, it's very unfortunate, and I'm worried what will happen 100 years down the road. How many is marriage going to be an eccentric lifestyle? I worry about that.
Well, actually, I can tell you this, that when we tell people that we've been married 30 years and that all 4 of our children are ours, they're like, wow, you got to be kidding. Really? So we are like an anomaly. So I agree with you, and that's what I'm seeing. Now, I'd like to challenge just a little bit the thought of, I agree with you 100% about the financial thing. What I see is that Muslims are going to colleges, they are amassing great debt, getting these degrees, and then they're getting married strapped with this debt. What does that debt do to the relationship? It strains the relationship. So I agree with Sadia, the greatest wealth that you can have is your fear for Allah. Taqwa. You know, and I respect that we may have some different feelings. What I want to do is at least get you to look at the principles that Allah has presented and at least think about what is the essence of what Allah is saying. Because I'm going to tell you this. I did not have a college degree when I got married. I was out of high school for 13 years. Bilal was born my junior year in college. My 4th child, our 4th child. I went on to do 3 graduate degrees with 4 children and work full time. Now to me, there's no greater way to struggle in the cause of Allah. That was my jihad. I had a truck like Sanford and Son. I would stand up in class at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and say, I have 4 children. I will clean out your attic, I'll clean out your garage if you'll give me what's in it. I would stand on Highway 117 in North Carolina with my old rickety-rackety truck and sell shirts for 25 cents to support my family. The people wanted me to give them a hanger and a bag and a shirt for 25 cents. But you know what? I did it. My wife would come and bring me ice water because July in North Carolina is very hot when you're on the side of the street. I would drive around and look for furniture on the side of the street and sell those tables. So I value the spiritual lesson in my struggle. And we lived so abundantly because we had faith. We had Iman. And I want to encourage young people to seek Allah's help. He promised that He would help if you married for the right reasons. And Allah helped me. Because if you look at the 5 senses, folks, there's no way I could have accomplished what I did. And I don't like the way that sounds. Everything I did was by the help of Allah. But I obviously had to time my calendar. But Islam encouraged me to get education. And I trusted Allah. And guess what? I never came out of school with 1 dime of debt. That is the power of Allah. And I'm encouraging you because if you do it for the sake of Allah, Allah can make the impossible occur for you. And that is the truth. I mean, I got scholarships out of it just like they just came. Now, I worked hard because I am not the highest intellectual in the world. I had to work very hard for my grades. So I want to say that as encouragement because that is, to me, a manifestation of what Allah can do if you want to serve Him. If If you want to do the right thing, Allah will make a way for you. Yes, Mommy.
Isn't it, I heard it is in Quran or Hadith, Allah says, I will provide you. For children and for risk, I will provide you. If you get married and you have children, I will provide.
That's the hadith it's a right. Allah has said it's a right on you that He will help the married person. Yes.
Yeah.
I just read, that's this hadith right here. You have a right on Allah. A devastating global phenomenon in Muslim communities is the alarming number of unmarried Muslim men and women. And I really would like, if you would share your frustration. Last night, I was speaking at an event in Moss Park, which is near Lake Nona. And I was talking about all of the reverts that would like to be married. I was talking about the number of students I have that would like to have a good husband and a good wife. Some of the husbands that would like to have a good wife. It is alarming because it is the spiritual way to have a partner, to have a mate. Allah created us in pairs with mates in mind. The way that we get balanced, if you look at the XX chromosome and the XY, is that we have to get married so that it's like an algebraic equation. We balance out. This is devastating to the individual as well as the community as a whole. What is the cornerstone of Islamic society?
Family.
Marriage and family. Now, let's look at something. Nowadays, the Western world is promoting Muslims to buy into this. I hear young couples in my office all the time and they say, we want to have one boy and one girl and be a happy family. Now, do you know what that's actually called in the world of psychology? One boy and one girl? It's called the nuclear family. Isn't that scary? Now let's look at it. If we have one boy and one girl, every single person in the United States, how many women are typically born to males? 3 to 1. So what's going to happen to our society if we don't produce enough males and females?
Depopulation.
Depopulation. Or people are going to turn from that which Allah has prescribed to some other methodology. And they will call that acceptable alternative lifestyles. And let's talk about it, folks. I really want you to get this because right now we have a masjid in Washington, D.C. that is called the Gay Masjid. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. And that imam did his master's degree at the same college that I did mine.
Should we hold that against you?
No.
I hope not. I had no idea.
But you also want to say that it's a very, very large population that goes to this country.
Yeah.
But here's what I want to say. This population is very large in Washington, D.C.
Babelut.
Now, in South Africa, there is an imam who is openly of that persuasion. And in Russia, there is a man openly of that persuasion. So you can, they have a masjid. So you can live in denial if you'd like to. But if you don't encourage marriage and you don't encourage family, this is what's really happening in the world. And it's my responsibility as an imam to tell you instead of to keep it under the carpet. It is a big problem, folks. We need to encourage marriage and production. Let me tell you something. and I mean this with all my heart, I had 4 children for the sake of Allah. Because in my upbringing, I was one of 2 children. My brother died when he was 29 years of age, leaving me an only child. I grew up thinking that you don't want to have more than 2. As a matter of fact, our 4th child was conceived at my father's beach house, and my father said, "Boy, you got enough children," and he sold the beach house. So even the other generations are trying to encourage us not to have more than 2 children. And Allah said that these children are blessings. Yes, they come with struggle to pay the bills, struggle to clothe them, struggle to feed them. But Allah provides, and they are a blessing, and we've got to think that way, folks. We cannot buy into the world and say, "But it's so hard." Yeah, but look at the blessings you're getting. I remember a Time magazine article said that by the time a child graduates from high school, you will spend $1 million on each child. The Western world says, "No, I want that for me." But you're not thinking about the global picture. Because when you want that for me, then what is it going to say a couple of generations down the road? And I think my family is a prime example. The only one that could carry on the site's name in my family was me.
So, Imam Sykes, is there a biological, because obviously this is not because of modern society, this is not because of internet. You know, this kind of behavior happened thousands of years ago, if it's mentioned in scripture. So there has to be some biologic explanation for this, you know, some natural explanation for this.
Well, you know, let me say this. You know,
and it always should be a minority, hopefully, but there is a minority that probably.
If anybody has some stats on this, I'd love for you to share it with the class. You know, I look at my wife, she was one of 9 children. When we got married, we wanted to have 13. I'm serious. We talked about it. Because we wanted to have cheaper by the dozen. We all know that that's a fallacy. But we did. And Allah knew what He was doing when He gave me cancer after 4. Because if I'd have had any more, I probably might have been crazy. Because I grew up, like I said, in a small family. I didn't have the coping skills. I didn't understand the dynamics. It stretched me as far as I could be stretched to have 6 people living in the same house. Because of the way I grew up. It was unbelievable. And yet my wife, there were 9 of them in how many bedrooms, Noreen? 2 bedrooms.
I was one of the 9.
You were one of 9. So Allahu Alam, I just think one of the things as a therapist I see in large families is that you have better social skills. Because you got to fight. When there's 5 children, everybody's fighting for a slice of the pie. When there's 2 children, you each can have 2 pieces and there's still pie left. Alright, alhamdulillah. The unnatural decision to abstain from marriage has so desensitized Muslims that the perversion and sinful practices that non-Muslims find acceptable are becoming commonplace in our community. Now, I want to tell you that what really breaks my heart is when young people come into my office and they tell me about sexual acts that they have participated in. Now, I want to say something. I'm not here to beat up anybody. If you've made a mistake, I'm not here to castigate you, condemn you, or indict you. But what I want to do is if I can save somebody else from this mistake, then it's my responsibility. This word right here, anything that goes in front of this means it's referring to this. And I have young people that have bought in to the Western ideology, and they'll say to me, I have not had this unless That, or some other word that you want to add, is called that. Everybody understand me? And those people are participating in this, thinking it's okay. I definitely don't want that on the board.
Yeah.
Because somebody comes in, I'll never have my glasses. Alhamdulillah. Does everybody understand where I'm coming from? Now I want to share something with you. 10 years before I became a Muslim, we had a conference of Christian ministers. And you know what that conference was about? This very thing. Christians were coming and saying, well, we haven't had this, but we've had anything you want to add before that. And the ministers were being encouraged to educate people that the word virgin means unsoiled. Unsoiled. The real concept of virginity in Islam is even your mind is unsoiled. And we live in a society where billboards are soiling our mind. Magazines that come in the mail are desensitizing and contaminating how we think. We don't even order them. How many get magazines, sales books in the mail that you didn't order? Yeah, and they are haram. The content of those things you don't want in your house. We want to guard our children against that. And I'll share a beautiful story that some of you heard me share before. 28 years ago when I became a Muslim, one of my best friends was Aziz Ranganwala. He came from Pakistan to get his master's in engineering. He had never seen undergarments in his life in a magazine. Now that is the kind of purity that Islam prescribes, folks. It is not meant for us to see undergarments displayed in the way that they are in the West. Now what is this called? It's objectifying the human being created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Calvin Klein ads and Victoria's Secret ads. Do you think this is healthy for our children to see this? And yet we can't even go to Mall of Millennium without being molested. When we walk by certain stores, we are actually spiritually molested. And we need to come back to this understanding, folks. It's nothing cute about that. Because it is affecting the way that we think. No Muslim wants the Muslim community to fall into lifestyles that cause the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to be destroyed because of perversion and disobedience. Protection against that fate can only be through lawful marriage. Marriage is the practice of the Prophet. And Surah Al-Ra'd, Surah 13 and verse 38. And we have surely sent messengers before you, O Muhammad, and granted them wives and offspring. Wives and children. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam made it crystal clear that marriage is part of his sunnah and that whoever neglects it is not of his true followers.
Even if you've already been married?
He didn't put any caveats.
So Imam Sahib, when did Hazrat Muhammad married first time? What age?
25.
25 was when he married Khadija.
So that's a sunnah, isn't it?
That is sunnah, absolutely. But he commanded his Sahaba to marry earlier.
And one of the reasons why he didn't get married earlier is because he had no job and he did try to get married, but it's just that people, I think there was one proposal that he did send, from what I've heard, to Abu Talib for his daughter, and it was very politely refused for someone else. So it's not like he wasn't trying. It's not
Maybe
like
it was God's way of showing the example that this is the right age to marry.
Well, there are other people.
But he later taught other Sahaba to marry younger. And I think that, with all due respect, when we try to do what the Prophet did, we might be setting ourselves up for failure on some level, because we are not perfect. The last perfect person was Prophet Muhammad. We try to emulate what he did, but I think when we start sort of comparing ourselves to the Prophet, it can be very, very difficult for us, because it's almost like that perfectionist sort of ideology. We do want to emulate what the Prophet enjoined us, but can I actually be the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Can't do that.
I think my point is biology and nature, I think, completes around 21, 24 for different genders and allows the brain to function more properly rather than make emotional decisions at 17, 18, 19 and have to pay for it for the rest of your life.
Well, I think what you're alluding to is that the amygdala is developed in females around 22 and 25 in males, right? This is sort of what you're alluding to, right?
Yeah.
And I respect that. However, what I have seen is that if a male and a female who are younger than that marry, because the woman is ahead of the man, if she lovingly coaches him, she protects him. Because you see, if a beautiful woman says, Habibi, Habibi, I really don't know if you should be driving down I-4 at 90 miles an hour. I'm not feeling very safe right now. And she smiles at him with that beautiful smile and that reassuring love. She becomes his amygdala. You see, I think that there's so much that women have to offer. Because, now if we want to talk about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he married a woman that was 15 years older than him, right? So how many of us did that? How many of us married a woman that was 15 years older? How many of us married widows? Because 13 of his wives had been married before. So that answers the question, maybe. Even if you've been married before. So we need to look at the whole picture. I don't want you to think that I think I'm right about everything. I don't. But what I'm seeing in the Muslim community troubles my heart tremendously. It actually pains me. Because I'm seeing so many things like, you know, parents not letting people marry across their cultural lines. So they are committed to the culture and not the religion. I told my girls, listen, you can bring me somebody that's purple. As long as they are Muslim, alhamdulillah, and they will take care of you and be good to you. You can bring me a green person. As long as they love you and are kind to you, like I've been to your mother.
So Muslim in practice, I hope, not Muslim in name.
I mean in practice, brother. Amen. That's why I said, and be good to you, Sabria. Yes.
So what if it's, they're not looking at it from a prejudice? What if you come from a culture and you desire your kids to marry from that particular country because you want to have something in common with the other in-laws? You know what I mean? To go and sit and have tea and break bread and do some of those cultural things that you've always wanted to do. Now they're married from a different culture, and there's, as far as the parent-in-laws, there's nothing in common.
Well,
So
according to the hadith,
but just saying, you know, you as a parent, you look forward to being a grandparent with the other grandparents and having that commonality. It's not about being prejudiced.
but
it's about
is
being
it what
comfortable.
the Prophet taught?
No.
Or is it what you want? Is it your desire as a
Of course
parent
it's my desire.
that matters, or is it what the Prophet prescribed?
Can I do a follow-up on my Muslim in practice and Muslim in person or whatever?
You can, but I do want to come back to what
So if you
Sabria
have a
said.
Christian or a Jewish faith person or a non-Muslim in name person who is a practicing Muslim, why not let your daughter marry him?
Because what is going to happen to the children? You know, I want to share that I have been in cases where I believed, I deemed by law, that somebody wanted to marry a Muslima because of that particular Muslima race, and after they married them, they then left Islam. And what does that do to the child?
Confusion.
And I can tell you that I've been in situations where after that's happened, devastating things have happened to the children. I don't have all of the answers. I'm trying to share with you my experience and tie them to the Quran and the Hadith. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, marry away from your tribe is better. You can marry your cousins, but he said marry away from your tribe is better. That's what he said. You can do both, but what is best practice? Marry away from your tribe. See, the one thing, folks, that the biggest problem we have is that in some cultures, they have read the verse that says, reverence the wombs that bore you, and they reverence their mother, but they don't reverence their wife. And the wife bears you children. I can tell you that as a marriage counselor, I've had situations where a man drug his wife by the head and made her kiss his mother's feet.
Not my son.
That's oppression. And how is that anything but compulsion? I can't tell you how many times as a marriage therapist, men have forced their wives to apologize to their mothers. Now the Quran says, I hope everybody's listening because this is important, that we are supposed to take care of our parents. It does not say that they got to live with you. And nobody can bring me that in a hadith or the Quran, because it doesn't say it. And I've seen more marriages destroyed because of mother-in-laws and father-in-laws.
Yeah, it is that.
Yes, brother.
They are
I've
shaitan.
been here for some years in the first round, I'm getting this wrong. Most of the imams, when they give a khutbah, they
Like
don't
what?
go
My
beyond
son is
saying,
not like that.
heaven is under the mother's feet. Heaven is... Go beyond that. I mean, your wife is there, your husband is there, your children are there, mother is there, but you cannot neglect your family for your mother.
Absolutely. Listen,
Yeah.
please do not misunderstand me. You have an obligation to revere the womb that bore you. Does it say they must live with you?
No.
No. And I have found, and may Allah forgive me if I'm overstepping my bounds, there's no house big enough for 2 queens.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely not, especially in the cultural world.
I have seen so much oppression, folks, and power play. So much so that ISNA and ICNA have written numerous articles about this. It's one of the biggest problems we have right now. And in the South, we talk a lot as therapists about the problem with rites of passage. Because many guys are still married to their mama. They can't even go to the bathroom without asking mama. Now I'm as serious as a heart attack. It's a problem, folks. So, you know what?
So all the problems are because of women, is that? Brother,
I'm going to reserve space in go back to Winter Park with me because you might not be able to ride in your car.
Brother, are you in danger today? Brother says you're gonna go to the parking lot today, yeah?
I might have to referee something. I want to ask you something. If you have any criticism of anything I've said, tell me in the class. Don't go to the community and say, oh, astaghfirullah, that's stupid Imam Sykes. He's telling people this and that and the other. Tell me and give me a proof from the Quran and the Sunnah where I am wrong. I'm a marriage therapist and I see disease in our community.
Yes.
And if we don't do something about it, folks, the disease is going to become an epidemic, which is out of control.
It
Yes,
is
ma'am.
already epidemic.
Well, we do want to say that sometimes, not always a disaster.
Speak up, sweetie. Speak like you're talking to me sometimes.
Hold on a second. I said that, but not always a disaster.
It is not always a disaster. No, nothing is always. But how many people, I want you to raise your hand if you know of 3 situations like I'm naming now. 3 situations where there is an imbalance of power within the home because of an in-law. Do you see the hands, folks? People are like afraid. Don't let me, I'm afraid.
I'm looking at Nasser. Your hand's not up.
His hand is halfway up. He knows the 1.5 families that have a problem. All right. I want to, I'm going to stop here so we can get the prayer. And so I'd like to, Mason, that's slide 14. I'd like to have a discussion. Anyone have anything they want to add?
We can turn the
Track?
camera off.
Any kind of discussion? Yes, brother.
You know, there